Swear your oath, Moraine Sedai.
I swear to speak no word that is not true, to make no weapon with which one person may kill another, and never to use the one power as a weapon.
Do you know what Aes Sedai means in the old tongue? Servants of all. It is they who serve the world.
The wheel weaves as the wheel wills.
You ready?
No.
Me either.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this very special live stream that we are doing with Robert from Geek. And there I am. Hello. Hope everyone's doing well today. I want to just thank Robert so much for joining us. This is like so exciting. The last time he was here, I was just saying to him is when we did this crazy, Justin and I did a 24-hour live stream back in April. I think it was for Easter. So Robert, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And I also want to mention that Justin is producing this episode, so it's going to be very slick, very cool, and I hope you all enjoy it. So the topic at hand is The Wheel of Time, which is a new series that's on Amazon Prime. If you haven't seen it, we might be touching on some spoilers, so hopefully you won't have that ruined for you. But anyway, I just want to welcome Robert from Indie Geek. Hi, Robert. Oh, he's muted.
Hello. Sorry about that. It's an absolute delight being here. Thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine. It's wonderful to be on your channel.
Well, I'm always happy to have you here, and you are always welcome to come anytime that you want. So why don't you, everyone knows who you are, but if, in case they don't, you want to just tell us, everybody a little bit about yourself? Oh, you're muted. You're muted again, my friend. Robert, you're muted. Do you hear me?
Again, see, this is amateur hour here in England, I have to say. So I will just very quickly, I will introduce myself. I have a channel, Indie Geek, which has been going now for a few years. I cover Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire, Lord of the Rings, The Witcher, and also a little bit of a few other things like this, The Wheel of Time, which is something that I'm very excited about. I've been watching it avidly. I've read the books, and I just love what they've done with this. So it's a real pleasure to be here. As I say, Heidi, you've been on my channel a long time ago, and then again a couple of times since, I think, and a huge admirer of what you do. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm really looking forward to this.
Well, if anybody doesn't know this, the very first time I did a live stream was on Robert's channel. So he invited me to do a live stream. I was so nervous. I remember it was when we were living at our old house. I didn't even have like a proper light or anything. So that was sort of my first experience. And of course, you made me feel at ease. And I'm always, love chatting with you about anything. So, but today, so we're talking about Wheel of Time, and I have actually, I can't really comment in the comments, guys. So if you're here, welcome. But I have actually, my laptop is on top of my keyboard, so I can't really type. So if you're here, I just want to say welcome. I just want to say hello to Peter Griffin and Cindy are here so far. So, but as you come in, please leave comments and say hello. We'd love to see you. So to start off, Robert, what I wanted to just sort of like, first impressions of Wheel of Time. Like what are your overall, we've only seen 5 episodes. What are your overall thoughts of the 5 episodes so far?
Well, I'm really liking it. I have to admit, it was something that I was a little uncertain about when I heard that they were doing an adaptation. And also when I heard that they were shrinking it down to fit in with the needs of TV. It's a 14-book series. It's a massive series, plus a prequel as well. And season 1, I it's only going to be 8 episodes, and they're going to fit more than a book into that first season. And have to admit, I was feeling a little bit uncertain how they're going to do this. They're going to have to chop out huge amounts, but I'm loving what they've done so far. I think that the world building has been there. It looks amazing. This is an Amazon production, and they've thrown huge amounts of money at it. You can tell they've thrown huge amounts of money at it. Rosamund Pike is brilliant. So yeah, all in all, I'm really excited. I'm loving what it looks like. I'm loving the feel, and I'm loving the adaptation.
Yeah, it was funny because so I had, it was really weird. So about, I don't know, maybe a couple of months ago, someone said, "Are you going to cover Wheel of Time?" And I said, "Oh, I haven't seen it yet." Like, I didn't even know what it was. Like, I thought it had been a show that was already on. And I'm like, okay, I'm usually 6 months behind. I haven't seen it. And she says, no, it hasn't even come out yet. And it's based on this, this book series. So now, so you've read the books. Now, obviously, how many books are there? You said 14?
Yes. Yeah, 14
That's
plus
a lot.
a prequel, and they're all proper thick epic fantasy length as well.
So immediately you were saying that you thought, okay, this would be really challenging, kind of like Game of Thrones. Like, how are they going to do this? So in terms of just give me a bit of a high level idea, but in terms of an adaptation, how do you think they're doing so far? I know they've had to make obviously some changes, but what are your impressions about that?
Well, I have to admit, I've come around quite full circle on this, because first of all, I was a bit concerned. The first couple of episodes, broadly speaking, they were doing what I thought they were going to do, which was taking a large bit of text and then just sort of squishing it down. And I thought they did an okay job. I thought it was fine, but I thought they've missed out a bit here. There was my favorite character wasn't there, and he should have been there in that scene, that kind of thing. And I thought, this is just going to leave me feeling a little bit uncertain. But as they've progressed on, particularly when we get into episodes 4 and 5, for me episode 4 is where it really kicks off. They've actually branched out a lot more. They've kept to the overall storyline, they've kept to the characters, they've kept to the ethos of it, but they have created a lot of new scenes. And I have to admit, I'm actually liking the new scenes more than the adaptations of the stuff from the books, which is quite a rare feeling for me. Normally I'm quite a book purist, but here I think that they just, the showrunner, the directors clearly understand the text, they understand the story, and they've tried to adapt it to the screen, not just do a sort of a word from the book to the screen, but actually what works best as a TV show.
Yeah. Okay. So myself, I haven't read the books. I have no knowledge of it. If anybody watches my channel, they'll know that a show has to stand on its own. It can't be relying on the books. I have to be able to understand the series, the show, based on watching it. So for me, I sort of, the first episode I felt was a little bit like there was a little bit of an info dump. This isn't my area, but I felt there was a little bit like they're squishing quite a bit into just that first episode. Like even Jack, my husband, said, they could have probably fleshed that out more. But now that I'm into it, it's really exciting. It's really riveting, right? Do you feel that about it?
I think so. And I think that I entirely understand from the non-book reader perspective, they did have a huge amount of information to drop into that first episode. And because there's a natural cutting off point, really, for that. At the end of the first episode, you could have gone in depth and had the first 4 or 5 episodes at, no huge spoilers here, but like the village where everyone lives to start with. They could have expanded that out, but once they'd made the decision, we're just going to have the 1 episode here, really, that from that moment on, they did have to squish a lot of things in, because you do have to introduce a lot of characters straight away, and you do. In order for us to understand why certain people are there, you also have to understand a lot about the world and a lot about the history, and also a lot about how magic works. So they couldn't just give us a very soft, slow introduction. They did have to put a lot of information there. But it's later on, once we've got and they can actually start doing character development and actually helping us explore to see what it means to be these characters in these different situations. That's when it's really starting to work for me.
One of the things I saw, sorry if I'm skipping ahead here. One of the things I saw is that you shared on social media on Twitter is how beautiful the world is. You shared that one picture of the White Tower, and
Yeah.
it is. And the cinematography, I mean, obviously a lot of it's special effects, I assume, but they do have some really beautiful locations. I didn't even look into it. I didn't even look to see where it was shot. But also the interiors are just stunning. So what do you think about the way the show looks?
Well, it reminded me, and I think this is perhaps intentional on their part, of a lot of the first few episodes. There's a lot of traveling going on, and it reminded me of those wonderful scenes in The Lord of the Rings where it feels like an advert for New Zealand, and you're just watching this as look at all this beautiful country. They filmed this in the Czech Republic, so if you're seeing the beautiful places there, those are there. Yes, there's a lot of CGI there as well to put new things on there, but the outside looks fantastic. I think, and just to sort of continue the Lord of the Rings link, the thing that really encourages me is that this is clearly big budget, but compared to the Lord of the Rings TV show that we're going to be getting September next year, that is several times bigger budget than this. So if this is looking beautiful, just how good and amazing is that going to look? This is Amazon. In some ways, they're doing a kind of a dry run for that. This is their first epic high fantasy world, and now they're going to have the second one, which they're putting huge amounts of effort in. So I think they've done. I've heard some people complaining a little bit about the CGI. I think CGI can always look a little bit ropey sometimes when you've got sort of fantasy creatures and the like, but as far as I'm concerned, it's looking lovely, and it's looking like a fully realized fantasy world, which is what I want.
Yeah. Now, let's just start. Like I jumped ahead there, but now, what about the plot? So we've got. I mean, there's a lot of characters. There's a lot of stuff. There's like parallel storylines going on all at the same time, kind of like The Witcher. You know, you've got so many characters that they're introducing. It can be kind of like, you know, brain aneurysm kind of stuff happening. So now you're going into it having read the book, so you probably had a little bit of a grasp on it. Myself, I didn't. But what are your thoughts about the plot and how they're telling the story?
I'm liking it. As I say, what they've done is they've condensed, as I say, they've condensed a lot of it. So there's long journeys where the characters split up into smaller groups, and then over the course of the next few books, well, basically most of the series of books, this same core set of characters kind of meet up and then split up in different groups and then go off and do things, and then some of them meet up and they break down into a different group. So you just see everybody interacting with all of the other characters in different ways, and they've kind of kept that spirit there. I think they've kept the pace up. This is a thing that will be more of a concern the deeper into this we go, which is Robert Jordan. Even fans of his writing accept that later on in the middle and second half of the book series, the pace slows quite a lot. Even Rafe Judkins, the showrunner, has kind of laughingly said, well, maybe we can cut a couple of books out from that. So everybody accepts that perhaps pacing can sometimes be an issue with the source material. But I think that they started with a bang, then they've sort of slowed down a little bit to allow us to understand the characters. And I think, well, I would love to throw something back to you in terms of a question here, because this is something as a book reader, I'm very aware of, is that a lot of the plot is around this idea of who is the dragon reborn, the dragon being this sort of great mythical character. Time is a wheel. This is a character who comes back and back in age after age. And book readers, obviously, having read it all, we know the answer to all of this kind of conundrum of what's going on. And there does appear to be sort of an unspoken agreement amongst the content creators not to give away any of this kind of secret. And the show has played up quite a lot, more so, I think, than the books. The mystery of who is it? Maybe it's this person, maybe it's does it come across to you as a mystery? Because it's quite hard from somebody who knows where this is all leading.
Oh yes, no, absolutely. Actually, I think I might have read a spoiler, which kind of was like, oh, like,
Okay.
it's going to happen, right? I mean, because the differences with Game of Thrones is the book series hadn't been finished, so we really didn't know who would end up on the Iron Throne. Whereas this one, we still don't. I won't go there. Whereas this one, obviously the book readers do. And so it's sort of, but no, I love it. I feel like I'm kind of just really enjoying getting to know the characters themselves. And I think the other thing I really love is that they did some surprising casting, which, I'm sure there was people who, when they read the books, they had a certain sort of visual in mind of what the characters would look like. So in this, they did some really diverse casting. And what did you think about all that?
It works for me. I think there's only one character of the original lot, the five Emmonsfielders, who's specifically supposed to have a different ethnicity, and that is drawn out on the show. So I'm perfectly happy with that. I don't think that there's a huge issue. I think the thing that and I don't know because we've not seen enough of this world yet. The thing that I'm more concerned about is that different parts of the world feel different, because this is a very rich and diverse world. We've got different cultures happening in lots of different places. And what I wouldn't want is for everywhere to have the same kind of feel to it. So as long as we start moving around this world, as long as we can maintain the idea of this rich and varied world, then I'm all for it. And I think where possible, to having a diverse casting is an excellent thing. Just on something you mentioned earlier, this actually, complete digression, but the Wheel of Time is actually the reason why it took me so long to read A Song of Ice and Fire in the first place, because I was given A Song of Ice and Fire, Book 1, A Game of Thrones, by a friend years and years and years ago, and said, you will love this book. And I put it on my shelf because the series wasn't finished, and I wanted to wait until the series was finished. Because in A Wheel of Time, I had started reading A Wheel of Time, got part way into it, and then Robert Jordan died. The writer of A Wheel of Time died without finishing the series. And that had such a huge impact on me. I decided I was not again going to start reading epic fantasy series until it was finished, which is why it took me a few years before I actually got down to it, until I saw Game of Thrones season 1, actually, until I got around to actually reading the books there. But thankfully on this one, Brandon Sanderson, who's another excellent writer, he picked up the baton and did the last 3 books as well. So the series was finished. But yeah, there was a time when everybody thought, well, that's it. We've had 11 books and we'll never find out the end.
Yeah, no, I think I read that. Yeah, that it was that would have been really, really difficult. And I'm wondering if that might even happen with George. I don't know. Like, some people have talked about, is he going to finish it?
La, 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 la,
Yeah, I know.
la, la.
I won't go there with you. Okay, so one of the things I threw this into the notes, but I wanted to just quickly touch on fantasy tropes, because I mean, you're a big lover of fantasy, and when I saw this, obviously, Lord of the Rings came. There were a lot of things that I was like, okay, I've seen this before, like the Trollocs, for instance. A lot of people are comparing them to the orcs, just the Chosen One, the Dark One, even like I was laughing at the White Cloaks, just because, of course, I thought about Game of Thrones. So what are your thoughts about some of those things that tend to get repeated over and over again in fantasy?
Well, this book series comes from those of us who've been reading high fantasy series for as many decades as I have, will know that there was a period of time in the sort of probably the 80s, 90s, noughties, where the vast majority of the genre was in the shadow of the Lord of the Rings, completely in the shadow of it, to an extent that I don't think I've seen any other genre be in the shadow of a single book. And it's understandable, because The Lord of the Rings clearly is so epically wonderful. But it did mean that for a huge amount of time, most of the best-selling book series had that kind of feel to them. Some of them were sort of trying to reject elements of it. Some of them were conforming to it. But if you think of stuff like Terry Brooks, Terry Goodkind, lots of the Terrys, they're all lots of the Shannara series. They all have this kind of same kind of feel. A lot of them of people coming from a small village with this wise mentor and an existential threat to the world from a big evil, and then a party goes off and saves the day. There were a lot that come from this. Robert Jordan recognizes this. He recognizes his debt. I've heard interviews with him when he talks about it. His take was that he felt that when this mentor wizardy person comes to the small village at the start of the story, then the people should be slightly more reluctant to go with this person. And that was the starting point for a lot of his thinking about what might that story look like. And then he added on to it his own bits that were slightly different. What does a time as a wheel, time that goes around, time with reincarnation built in, what does that look like in this kind of a world? What does it look like to have quite a matriarchal or female-led society in a lot of this world as well, particularly when it comes to magic? The magic users, the only formalized magic users are women in this world. So he put his own tweaks on it. But he definitely was, and you say with the Trollocs, there they are, orcs. Effectively, they're the stormtroopers of the bad guy. There's a lot that you can point at and say, yes, that's a trope. I mean, as a slight digression, slightly more meta thoughts on using tropes. A lot of them are actually I don't mind too much, because it's a shorthand for us to understand. If you're watching a science fiction film and the captain says go to hyperspace, you know what that means. We know that they don't have to explain all of the science behind what that is, because we understand what that means. And in the same way that you could just you can have a trope of the Dark Lord, we understand they can get into details and shift and change things later on, but we understand that this is the big baddie. So I don't mind too much some tropes within fantasy and science fiction if they are just used as shorthand and then expanded on later.
Yeah, all excellent points, Robert. Now, what about the characters? So there's some like really great characters in this, and I have to say, even if the budget isn't as big as Lord of the Rings, the acting is excellent. Like especially there's the one ward that, you know, in the last episode, he was featured quite prominently. I'm like, who is this guy? Where did he come from? Obviously he's a British actor, and I don't want to give anything away about him and what happens, but just was like, wow, like he's up there with like a Sean Bean as far as I could, could tell.
Yeah. So the acting is good. I think that it's, for me to start with, so the main named actor that we all know obviously is Rosamund Pike, and I think for me it was very noticeable in the first couple of episodes that things seemed to work really well when she was on screen, and perhaps slightly less so when she wasn't. But then you get a period when she's not on screen for a while, or she's not saying much for a while, and that kind of pace kind of slacked. But why I think that's the episode where it starts kicking off around episodes 4 and 5 is that we actually start to get this much broader cast of people. It's not just the 5 Emmonsfielders, but we get this wider group of people who are around, who are some fantastic characters. Kate Fleetwood, who's this red Aja.
Oh yeah, she is really
fantastic.
Amazing. And so strange looking. Like Jack and I were talking about her cheekbones.
Yes, she has.
She's
she
just
has
got these
definitely
like
got cheekbones.
Like I like just such an unusual, otherworldly kind of look in a way.
Yeah, and
See,
I think that
there she is. Justin has her up there.
Oh, excellent. She's, I mean, in normal life, she's got dark hair as well, so she's got a completely different look. But having that really kind of austere but blonde hair coming out, it's And she fits perfectly to the description, I think, of her in the books as well. And there's other characters like Tom Merrilin, who's a character who's my favorite character from the books. He appears, who's this kind of like he's sort of a stereotypical fantasy bard, but you can tell that he's got like the weight of the world on his shoulders. He's got a backstory. He's got
I loved him. I loved him. And they were comparing him to the Bard of the Witcher.
Yeah.
Did you see some of the memes going on around that?
I did not, but I can well imagine, because they are yin and yang.
Absolutely. Yes. But also I love the baddie, like the White Cloak baddie. Oh my God. He is so good. I don't know that actor. But a terrifying character.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've actually they've taken that up a notch, I think, from the books.
Okay.
Certainly in the first couple of books, there were some extra scenes in there and extra.
There he is, Justin. He's
nasty
behind.
Things. Excellent. Extra nasty things that they've been doing. So they've made them even more of an extra element on the show.
Now, what about some of the themes? Like you sort of talked, we talked about the fantasy tropes and stuff, but in terms of themes, I mean, there's a lot of universal themes, obviously, we've got here. Did you want to touch on that at all? Like, obviously, friendship is a theme here, kind of like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I think it's probably quite tropey, but this sort of good versus evil thing, I think, is really central to this. And it's trying to work out not just what is what is a good person or what is a bad person, but how do you act good, particularly if you have got this kind of weight of expectation on your shoulders. All of these kind of characters, the central 5 characters, they start off with this idea of, maybe I'm the person who has to go off and do amazing things. And I think that is a wonderful theme to be sort of exploring, of normal people with expectation placed upon them. So that's something that's always sort of flowed through this for me. And it doesn't really come out so much, I think, on the show. It has done a couple of times, but there's always this feeling of wanting home. And can you get back home? And will home ever be the same? If I've changed, does that mean that I can never go back? Really me, which is, again, it's a kind of, this is a Lord of the Rings theme very much as well, with Sam and Frodo playing through this quite a lot. But when you go out into the world and you change, does that mean that what you had before can no longer exist?
Yeah, it's funny because I just rewatched Dune, and obviously that is the case there. Again, Dune taking, I'm certain, some of the same themes from Tolkien. A lot of these sort of fantasy, it's sci-fi, but it definitely has a lot of fantasy elements in it as well. Have you seen Dune, by the way, Robert?
I have, yeah. I liked
so the idea that Paul can't go back, that's it. Like, let's go back to Callan. No, we can't. That part of our lives is done. We're moving on here. I just want to read a couple of comments, if that's okay, from the chat.
Yeah,
hi, everyone.
For you. And also, I just want to interject with one thing for Robert.
Sure.
Just like Tolkien, was in World War I. The author did serve in Vietnam, from my understanding, right? And he experienced. He was a helicopter gunner. Is that correct? Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So I think
interesting.
It seems like a connection of wanting to get home, most likely.
Yes, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think, I don't know, with Tolkien, the big theme which comes out for me from his sort of World War I experience is the idea of things being gone, things being lost, things never being able to come back. And this echo, so with the Entwives, when Treebeard's there, very sadly sort of, have you seen the Entwives? They've gone. We don't know where they are. And this kind of feeling of loss is very, very strong in a lot of Tolkien's works. But yeah, there's this for Robert Jordan. Yeah, I think that having seen war and not wishing to glorify it, but actually seeing this does impact on lives and change the person as well as the world around you. That does come across very strongly.
Oh, yeah, excellent point. It's interesting to know where the author themselves are coming from. So, because that obviously would inform their work. I want to just say a few hellos to people who are here and then some of the comments. So I said hi to Peter already and Cindy. Lily is here. Big Bands, sorry. Liquison is here. White Cloaked One. I don't know. Tim Back. He says, I think they're doing a great job adapting so far. We got a super chat. Thanks so much from Content Chat, who says, you guys are the best. Love the collaboration. What else have we got here? Tanya from A Thousand Eyes in One podcast is here. She says she's read the first 3 books. Tanya is a friend of the show. White Cloak One said, have not read the books, coming into this totally blind and enjoying it so far. So you're like me. And then Peter says he's read it books. So there was a couple of other comments I was going to read from DOS Box Mom. I once got a free copy of book 1 at a convention, but never read it. Santa's bringing a box set of the first 3 books, though. Wonderful. Who else do I have a comment here from? I saw one I was going to read. Liquison said the production effort of this episode is rather great. And White Cloak says Rosamund Pike, sort of what along the lines of what Robert was saying, really brought almost a sense of confidence to her younger cast members in the first couple of episodes. Then you gradually see them come into their own as actors. It's marvelous to behold. Wonderful comments, you guys. Great job. Robert, what do you think of what that last one was about Rosamund Pike's character? Who is Moraine? She's sort of like the anchor, I guess, to the story. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, she is very much so. So I think that I would completely agree. She when she's there, certainly in the first couple of episodes, then she is the anchor, the hub of it all, and you can sort of see everybody else is bouncing off of her, and that's right for how the character should be, because she is this completely overpowered person coming into this village, and obviously everybody is reacting against her or with her, and it's all about what's going on with what she's doing. Just a very quick shout out there to the White Cloaked One. Very good to see you, and good day to you. And you did also say, I just wanted to pick up on a comment there about Perrin in particular, a man at war with the darkness inside.
Great character.
Yeah, he is. This is something I would just say. I was lucky enough to get invited to the premiere in London of the. They showed us the first 2 episodes. I wasn't.
I saw your post about that. I saw that, and you got your picture taken in front of the poster and all that.
The big poster, yeah. I was still there seemed to be like two levels to this. I was definitely behind the cordon and well away from the actual stars and people, but I got to see the first 2 episodes a little bit early, and also the actors and the showrunner and people were there on stage and did a little Q&A, and this was one of the things which came out was about Perrin. And Rafe Judkins, the showrunner, said there is a scene which in episode 1, which if you're a book reader, you will have looked at and said, hang on a moment, that didn't happen in to Perrin in the books. That's completely made up. And you'll remember, if you haven't read the books, I won't give it away for anyone who's not watched the TV show, but when he's there during the big battle and he does a thing that he probably doesn't wish to do, that moment there, that was made up in order to help us understand his character development, which is there in the books later on in the TV show, having this battle within himself with anger and rage and things like that. It is a reason for it, not just this is what he's like as a person.
Yeah, no, I love his development, and I love the actor. I think he's terrific. I love the young cast, and actually I was thinking it's kind of nice because kind of like Game of Thrones, you've got the young up and coming stars, and in the same way their characters are sort of developing, but that you also have more seasoned actors in this as well. So I really enjoy that, and obviously Rosamund Pike is a fantastic actor. I think she's doing a great job. Hey, so while you're on my show, I was thinking it'd be fun to talk a little bit about the costumes. Then we're a
I
little
would
past the midway
love to
point.
talk about the
Yeah.
costumes. I mean, that's the only reason I'm here, Heidi, is because I've got a million questions. I've
I
got
just
a big
invite you
sheet
so I
of
can have you
questions to
chat
be
about
asking you.
costumes.
For those who don't know, I've made a decision. I made it several years ago when we were both big Westworld fans, and they released some I can't remember whether it was like a trailer or a set pick, something like that, and there was something. I was convinced that this blurry character in the background was wearing a certain type of costume, and Heidi was convinced it was another. Of course, Heidi was right. And
no, but you got the part
moment,
about the kimono right, though. You had that part right.
Well, let's gloss over
in
the
the
details.
snow.
The fact of the matter is, Heidi was right and I was wrong. And from that moment on, I realized that I must be humble and forever bow before the ultimate costume CEO. This is I always annoy you on Twitter by sort of throwing questions over to you about what about this costume? What do you think here? What does that mean? And so I'm delighted to be able to throw questions at you in person here.
Yeah, well, Asun's here, and she's my go-to costume person as well. She says, "Oh, the costumes," and I think she means that in a good way. Asun, you can tell me if I'm wrong. But the first episode, I was like, "Oh, I don't know." Like I was kind of like, but it's always hard. And even, Tony Teflon even says that he always gives a series, like at least the first season, to kind of find their legs. It's difficult, especially with fantasy, especially when you're doing an adaptation, to create, you got to do all this world building. And of course, the costumes are part of that world building. So when you were reading it and then you saw it, was it anything like what you imagined? Just from your perspective?
Roughly, I would say. I think the thing that it built in with what I was saying earlier about the need for diversity within the world, the thing that I'm looking for is that the bigger the world gets, the more I want each area to have a kind of a feel, which is part architecture and it's part people and it's part costumes. There's lots of elements to it, but definitely I want the costumes to play a part in that. I certainly think that the Aes Sedai, they do fit what I kind of imagined them to be looking like. Particularly, again, Kate Fleetwood, Leandrin's, I think her costume works absolutely perfectly for me, because I always have a big problem with, not a big problem, but just like the kind of thing I always note is when people are traveling in fantasy worlds with these magnificent long flowing cloaks and things, and I just think that does not seem practical. That doesn't seem what I would wear. But her character seems to have something which is not quite this big flowing robes, but slightly more jodhpurish. I'm sure you have a better.
Yeah, better for traveling. No, I think that's exactly, you're right. Yeah. I think it's like a jodhpur, a trouser. One of the things that I kind of laughed at, actually, there was one episode, might have been 4, and they're on their horses, and it looked like a wardrobe person came and pulled their cloaks out and kind of spread them out, like, because obviously if you jump on a horse, your cloak isn't going to do that, right? It's going to either get underneath you or whatever. So I did laugh at that a bit. And Asun was discussing the breakdown, which is, for me, one of my favorite aspects of a show like Game of Thrones, where they just have an incredible team of people that do breakdown, making the costumes look realistic, making them look like they've been traveling through mud and dirt. So like, for instance, the white cloaks, which technically aren't even really white cloaks, they're just all white. Like I had somebody ask me what I thought of them. And I kind of said, I have to wait a little bit, but now I have a bit more time with them. What are your thoughts about those costumes?
Well, that was one of the things I was going to raise with you, because because this was a thing which stood out for me in terms of, as I've pithily said, I think probably to you, is that I pity their dry cleaning bills, because in that's so white. For me, it just felt almost too white, which normally costume doesn't take me completely out of character and make me sort of query the world itself, but that did make me go, well, if everything's that white, all of their clothes and all of their tents and their tablecloths and their napkins, they have to be washing these things every day. And that just, I mean, is that just me overthinking it, or is that Is that
Yeah,
fair?
well, my immediate thought when I saw them is I thought they looked like angels. They look like something you would like if you had like a battle of angels. That's sort of what I would think of them. And again, I always go back to Michelle Clapton. She's just, I think she's amazing. So when she did when she did Game of Thrones, and she didn't want to do the way that the White Cloaks are in Game of Thrones because she said it wouldn't translate to the screen that well. And I have to say, and actually, I don't even think this is how they are described in the book. So they have a white cloak, but not necessarily a white uniform, correct? Is that so? It's too much. And it's like there's this thing called teching in film, which is where you take something that is supposed to be white and then you dip it, or you break it down so that it's not pure glowing white like that. So I don't know. I'm not incredibly pleased with it. But a lot of the other costumes I think are really, really good. I just think it was an interesting choice. I don't know who made the choice. It might not even have been the costume designer. It might have been the showrunner who said, I want them to be in completely pure white. It just was an unusual choice, like you say, and even the tents and the dry cleaning, because it does kind of take you out of the story. Because then you're thinking all these things, like I'm always looking at it like, where are they getting the stuff from too? I'm always like, where are they in the region? Like if they're sheep farmers, obviously they would have wool or yarn. If they are in the big city, they might have access to silks and finer samites and things like that. But if they're, I'm like, where did they get all this fabric from? That's sort of how I always think about it. Oh, hi, Alicia. So that's a very good point. And then in terms of the colors of the Aes Sedai, I'm probably not saying that correctly.
Aes Sedai.
Aes Sedai, sorry. I like the colors that they chose because they are, even though it's a red, it's kind of not like a bright red. It's still kind of like a bit more berry red, and then the green and the blue. I kind of, what do you think of those colors that they've?
Yeah, I like them. They all seem. So there are 7. There will be 7.
There will be 7, but at the moment, Justin's showing he's got a picture here where we've got the blue, the green, and the red. And then there's also the yellow, which I don't know that we've been introduced to the yellow.
I'm not sure that we've seen a yellow yet. No, but
and
those are the different.
I don't know that we. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that it's because we've only gone 5 episodes and we might see more. And I know that will come out later. So for me, I like the colors that they chose. I thought they really worked well together. And I like the designs too. I think that they're pretty interesting because obviously, they're using some fantasy tropes, like, for instance, on what's her name? Moraine. She's got like these kind of like, these rigid, very fantasy like shoulders, it looks like hammered metal and it's got studs on it. So I'm like, I don't know about that. But, they wanted to make her a little bit unique looking. And I did like the first episode when they're showing her dressing and she's flinging the fabric around. And so, and I love the blue. So that, there's a lot of it I do like. And I love the traveling outfits that the 4 are wearing too. I think those are really kind of interesting.
Yeah. So I think that the way that they've designed those costumes works for me really well. And I think the fact that they're not bright actually works really well. As I say, it's quite a dulled down blue that Moiraine is wearing, that she rides around in, and that kind of works for me. I'd be interested with the 2 Rivers folk, the people who we start with. As you say, it's a matter of what they've got. Did that for me? There were a couple of things that did look a little bit like catalog shots, and which I kind of let them get away with anything, because if that looks really good, and some of them looked very good in their costumes, so I have no problem with that at all. But did you think it was perhaps a little too manicured at times, or did that work?
I did, yeah. Actually, I was gonna say, so Rand, his like sort of sheepskin coat like I think they kind of made it, they were trying to make it look like it was like, you know, it had been pieced together and everything, but it did look a little bit cataloged to me. Is that one of the ones you're thinking of?
It was. I mean, a lot of them, it just looked like, they didn't look like somebody had sort of hand stitched them all in a sort of a medieval-ish world.
Yes.
It felt like they were like perfectly seamed, and there was one that I tweeted out about, which did for me, was Rand gazing off into the distance wearing a woolly jumper, and I thought, I'm sure I've got that jumper.
His woolly jumper, or we call it a sweater in North America.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, his sweater was totally like from Ireland. Like it looked like something someone would have knit in Ireland, like contemporary. It does. It looks like he's a model. No, for sure. I forgot about that. But yeah, I was thinking about that coat though, because like for instance, there's a really, when the traveling party, sorry, I keep going back to Game of Thrones, but the traveling party that goes north of the wall in season 8, or I think it's season 7, you know, everything was like, it looked like it had been hand stitched, you know, they had taken, it looked like it might've been seal skin mixed with some, you know, I don't know, some other kind of caribou or some kind of indigenous animal that they had just put together, and they had it fur side in, which made so much sense. Like it just, like a lot of thought went into it. Whereas that coat, I was like, that looks like something, you know, like you say, that you would see on a runway. And then the other one that I kind of was going to comment on is a Gwen, who I love her, by the way. But she wears this, I called it like a medieval hoodie. It looks like a medieval hoodie. Like it has Sherpa lining in it. Like you would see it at Roots or something, which is this Canadian store that I shop at. And that's the type of thing you would see at Roots. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, yes. I mean, I think that one thing that they have done, which is quite well, as a sort of a nod to the fandom, is Robert Jordan as a writer. He had and people have lovingly noted down how many times he repeats the same phrase again and again and again, particularly connected with characters. And Nynaeve, he seems to love. She tugs her braid a lot and also smooths down her skirt a lot, as in dozens upon dozens of times. And they did actually do that. And I was wondering whether or not for Nynaeve, whether they deliberately made her have skirts that needed kind of like flattening down in some way.
To be smoothed down.
Yeah.
He soon says that sweater could appear in Knives Out and wouldn't look out of place. Correct. Because like if anybody's seen that movie, there's this beautiful Aaron sweater in Knives Out that's worn by Chris, have to remind me of his last name, from Captain America. Yes. Beautiful. By the way, I have an Aaron sweater, a real Aaron sweater that my father brought back from Ireland. Robert, I don't know if you've ever seen a real Aaron sweater, being a British lad.
Yes, indeed, yeah. Well, Ireland is not British, as every Irish person would say, but I'm
I know.
I'm aware of the country. I'm a big fan of a woolly sweater, as you would call it over there.
Or woolly jumper, as you would say, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so then what have I got left here to talk about with you? Sorry, guys, I just have to look at my notes. Okay, so just before we're getting close to the hour here, and then we're just going to wrap up. But is there anything for you that didn't work? I know we touched on a few things. Like, were there things that you were like, oh, that they nailed it, or oh no, that didn't work so well for me?
I don't think I think I'm with. I think you're saying Tony Teflon says you should watch a full series before you start judging, and I'm completely on board with that. I think you need to allow it a certain amount of time. I will tell you one of the things that I think they haven't quite got right yet, but it is an uphill battle, is that as a book reader, I personally tend to find the 5 core characters to be some of the least interesting there, because there are so many exciting characters around the outside of them. Moiraine and Lan and Tom Merrilin and Loyal, who we've not spoken about yet, but there's these wonderfully colorful characters around the outside, and so the central 5 often tend to be a little bit bland and whiny at times, but so they had an uphill battle there, and I think on some characters they've managed to show the character. On others, I think they haven't quite managed to bring that out yet. Maybe it's just because they haven't shown that or put that character in scenes that allow them to shine. So I'm thinking, for example, I love the Matt I think that he's come across particularly well, although they've changed the actor for season 2.
I heard that. Yeah.
Mysterious. We don't know why, but that's the case of it. I think Nynaeve has come across particularly well. I think perhaps Rand as a character needs to get a few more moments where we can see him as a character develop a bit. So I think that there is an uphill battle there for those characters to shine in and of themselves. But generally speaking, I'm really quite pleased with it. I think it's gone really well. Some of the scenes I think have worked brilliantly well. The ending of both episode 4 and episode 5 were actually really quite emotional on both counts, and to actually tug at the heartstrings that early on in a TV show is over characters that we've only really just been introduced to, is quite a talent, I think. So all in all, I'm so far quite impressed, I have to say.
Yeah, me too. But anyways, so what I was chatting with Robert about earlier is that maybe like at the end of the series, the end of season 1, we might get together in the new year and do a little wrap up of the end of the series. It's actually only 8 episodes, which is, it seems like television, they just keep making this seasons shorter and shorter. You know what I mean? I mean, they're long episodes, but still.
They're all proper hour-long episodes. And so Game of Thrones, the early episodes, we got spoiled later on with like epically long episodes. But to start with, the Game of Thrones episodes were only 45, 50 minutes long. So to have 8 hour-long episodes is not much of a drop down. But House of the Dragon is still going to be 10 episodes. Lord of the Rings will be down to 8 again. But I'm personally a fan of you do the right length, and we're now at a point particularly with streaming services where we don't have to worry to fit into schedules so much. We don't have to worry so much about advertising breaks for things, and you can allow the art to expand to the length that it needs to be. And I think that's a great thing. And if they think 8 episodes is what they need, great, then go for it. I always think of Sherlock as a great example of this, is that they could have done hugely long series, but they go, well, this time we'll do 3. Next time, well, we'll just do 2. We've only got 2 episodes, we'll make them. So they were quite happy with doing it along those lines without saying it has to fit to certain amounts. And I think that should be, we don't say, unless you're the Eurovision Song Contest or something like that, which means more to Europeans than over in North America, then you don't say your song only has allowed to be 3 minutes long. You make your song as long as the song needs to be. You're not saying this is how long a book needs to be. You write the book for as long as it needs to be. And the same should go for TV shows, in my view. You make the TV show as long as it needs to be for the content to breathe within it.
Fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to watching the rest of the season. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're working on for the next, while we were saying there's so many exciting things coming up in fantasy, but also science fiction. So what will you be focusing your energies on in the next several months?
Well, yeah, so this is an astonishing time for lovers of great science fiction and fantasy TV shows, films. There is so much coming up. The things that I'm specifically going to be covering coming up is The Witcher season 2. That's on the 17th of December. It's on Netflix, so they're going to drop it all at once, which provides a challenge for content creators to have to produce things at the right time. But I will be covering that in full, so look out for episode breakdowns, issues considered, and things like that. Then next year, there are 3 or 4 things, particularly House of the Dragon will happen next year. The Game of Thrones spin-off, I will be covering that in full when it does. Also, Westworld season 4 will be with us at some point. We don't know what.
Oh, did they announce that?
They are filming it now. So at some point, no, seriously, they're keeping very quiet about it, but they've always been quite good at keeping a lid on that. So they're filming it now. Some point next year, Westworld season 4 will be with us. The Lord of the Rings TV show is not the Lord of the Rings. For those who don't know, it's not the actual story, the Lord of the Rings. This is based in the world and based a few thousand years beforehand, but based on Tolkien's fantastic world and characters and stories. That's going to be September the 2nd next year. I will be covering that as well in full. And then the Winds of Winter. Too much to ask, perhaps. But if that ever happens, I will obviously cover that as well on my channel. There is so much stuff going on. I've probably forgotten a few things along the way. Yeah, there's a Witcher spin-off happening. There's another Lord of the Rings anime film happening. So many things happening out there.
That's exciting. Well, one of the things I'm hoping I can entice you to come on is when the new House of the Dragon show comes out. Maybe you would come and talk with me about that, because I've already been covering the costumes. It's like, it's been so weird because we've had so many, well, we've had a trailer, obviously, and we had, while I have you here just one more minute, what are your what are your sort of general thoughts about the new House of the Dragon before I let you go?
Well, my general thoughts is I'm very excited. And from what I've seen, it looks great. I think that HBO are going to put a huge amount of effort into this. This is their big thing. So, and we shouldn't underestimate the importance of this, but everywhere has got their franchise now. We've got Netflix, we've got The Witcher, we've got Disney, we've got Star Wars going on, we've got Amazon will have Lord of the Rings. Everyone's getting their franchise, and this is the one that HBO want. And because of the way that Game of Thrones season 8 ended, they know this is the thing. It sinks or swims with this. If they can engage people again with this as a franchise, it's going to be with this TV show. So they're going to throw everything at it. And from what I've seen so far, it looks really good. The one thing, just to take a step back, is to say that it is going to be very different from the first seasons of Game of Thrones in that this isn't a 700-800 page book put across onto 10 episodes. This is about a third of a 700-page book spread across several seasons. So there is going to be a huge amount more scope for the TV show to expand on characters, do things that aren't just there on the written page. So this is not going to feel so much like an adaptation as a different telling of the events.
Yeah, one of the things I was saying to Jack the other day is I'm kind of wondering who they're going to have us root for, because I'm reading Fire and Blood, and I'm like, wow, like they're all pretty awful. they're all really mean, they're just going around killing someone was asking me, what happens in the end, and I'm like, well, they all die. I don't know, like pretty much, like it's spoiler alert.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that is okay. And I think that what we've had in TV is we've had a lot of, anti-hero is just too vague a sort of a phrase as far as I'm concerned. But just think about some stuff like Breaking Bad or The Sopranos, or even The Wire. These are all classic HBO style TV shows. And on those, who were we rooting for? Were we really rooting in Breaking Bad? Were we want Heisenberg to win? Walter White, were we on his side? Well, we kind of liked him, but at the same time, we've recognized that he wasn't doing good things. Ditto The Sopranos. So I think that this is definitely a route they can go down. There will be some sympathetic characters there in the same way there was in Game of Thrones, but at the same time, a lot of the characters are going to be charismatic, but I'm not sure I'm 100% behind them.
Yeah, Peter Griffin says he's Team Green.
Team Green. Wow. I think if anything, I would just to answer your question with a very straight bat. If anything, then I think they'll be wanting us to be supporting Team Black.
Yes.
For the simple reason that this seems to be where all of the promotional material we've had so far seems to be going that way. And from our current sort of world perspective, they had the dirty done on them. They were their candidate was the named heir, and then there was a coup. So if anything, they're going to be having us on Team Black. But they've got people like Daemon Targaryen, who will be fantastic fun, I have absolutely no doubt, but probably we're not going to think he's a good guy.
No, absolutely not. Well, Robert, I want to thank you so much for doing this today. It's been so fun. Like I said, anytime you come on, it always just, it's just such a joy. And I love hearing your thoughts about things. It's just interesting. By the way, are you into MCU at all? Are you into any of that? Like, have you watched any of those shows?
Yeah, I have. So I have this sort of list of things that I just watch to enjoy. So the Marvel stuff, I loved Loki, I loved WandaVision. I'm not going to cover them on the channel
Yeah.
because I just like watching them and I want to
It's
watch
fun.
them and enjoy them.
Yeah, because I'm
Exactly.
watching
So,
Hawkeye right now. I was wondering if you've been watching that. Just kind of a
I
little bit of
watched the
fun.
first episode, and it felt like a Christmas special. I don't know whether they all do, but
They do.
They
Yeah.
do. Okay, well, I liked it and I enjoyed it, and I suspect I will go back and watch the rest of the episodes at some point. But I'll probably wait for them to, because they're doing that on a weekly basis. I'll probably wait for the whole lot to be there and then just sort of binge through it on a wet Wednesday afternoon sometime.
Yeah, it's kind of like I got to get home for Christmas, kind of. That's sort of the vibe of the whole thing. But anyway, I watched the first episode and I was like, but I've watched the next two and it's really good. So if anybody's on here and is looking for some fun Christmas viewing, that's a great show to watch, I think. So Justin and I will be working on some things. I think we're working on, I don't know if you watch, Justin, you have to tell me what it's called now. I've lost my brain. The Great.
Yeah.
About Catherine the Great. Anyway, so I'll probably be doing a video coming up about that. Robert, excellent show. If you're ever looking for a historical kind of comedy, not
a
quite
comedy
true
about
telling
Catherine
story.
the Great. Okay, fine.
Yeah, The Great.
Quite clever,
about
though.
Catherine and Peter the Great. So we're going to be doing a video about that. And yeah, so thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate it. As always, thanks for the super chat. That was really a nice surprise. And Robert, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. As I say, it is always my pleasure. It's fantastic to see you again there, Heidi, and Justin. Behind the scenes magic, as always, is impeccable.
Yeah, and Robert's all of his contact info is in the chat or in the description below. But also I want to say thank you to Justin, speaking of Justin, who is producing today's show, and he did such an awesome job as always. So everyone, have a wonderful day. We'll chat with you soon. See you soon.